Looks like we're already back for more Sonic the Hedgehog, but this isn't a mere run-through of the main games. This is as close to an all-inclusive Sonic retrospective as I can feasibly do. So for today's quick video, we aren't marching forward with the Sonic series, we're instead looking at the companion games to the ones on the Genesis that we already discussed, the 4 Sonic platformers released from the Sega Game Gear. The SGG was Sega's competition to Nintendo's Game Boy. While the Genesis took up a lot of Nintendo's market share, but ultimately lost the generation to the Super Nintendo, the Game Boy was just leagues ahead of the Game Gear in sales, even though the Game Gear does have the higher capabilities, which comes at the cost of needing to replace the batteries far sooner than would be reasonable. The first 3 of the games we are discussing today, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Sonic Chaos, were all released on Sega's 3rd generation hardware, the Master System, with a wider aspect ratio, making many sections of the gameplay more tolerable than they were on the handheld. But since I was feeling nostalgic, wanting to use the Mega Collection Plus and the Gems Collection, I'll be focusing on the Game Gear versions today, which would explain why the footage of Sonic 1 8-bit and Sonic Chaos are interlaced, because the Sonic Mega Collection Plus is one of those PS2 games that has 480p support, but must be activated using the square and triangle buttons when the PS2 logo comes up after selecting a game, which is fine on its own, but when using upscalers like the XRGB Mini or the OSSC, the frame blacks out for so long that I can't see anything, missing my chance for 480p. But anyway, I said this was going to be a quick video, so let's get down and dirty with it. Seriously, if you thought the 2000s was when Sega started spamming Sonic fast, like there wouldn't be tomorrow, then you'd be surprised to know that Sega's been doing this since the very beginning. No joke, something with Sonic's name on the box was put on store shelves at least once, or multiple times a year, every year until 2015. But anyway, how is this Sonic 1 tie-in game? Well, I have heard the idea online that this game is better than the 16-bit version of Sonic 1. To that I say, now that's just crazy talk. Seriously, these Game Gear platformers never interested me as a kid, so when I finally finished this game for my LP of it back in 2016, I never felt the remote urge to pick it up again, whereas Sonic 1 has always been, and my recent playthroughs for the review have solidified this, a game I could replay at the drop of a hat. Now, let's give credit where it's due. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 from the Master System and the Game Gear is batting close to 1,000. A character like Sonic was meant for the Genesis, as it had the power to fully realize the speed focus the character has. So going with the hardware, which normally makes games like this, and producing this, job well done there. But I do think that Sonic handles like crap in this game. I can't really explain it beyond my dying at times where I don't feel like it's my fault. Like Sonic's got a stick of butter under the bottom of his shoes every time he lands. If not for that, it wouldn't be far behind the Genesis version in terms of controls, as Sonic can do everything in this first 8-bit installment that he could do in the 16-bit version, but the levels he runs through just aren't as fun to play. Green Hill Zone, Bridge Zone, and Jungle Zone are all pretty decent stages, all things considered, simple platform to get to grips with, enemy placement I can't really complain about, and so on. But then you have Bridge Zone Act 2 that crams an auto-scroller down your throat, Jungle Zone Act 2 with a vertical climb that instantly kills you for messing up in the Master System version, a version of Labyrinth Zone that's even more boring than the Genesis original, as the air bubble timing is far more forgiving, removing a lot of the tension that came from the water before. With a Sonic that moves even slower underwater. Scrap Brain Zone is turned into a maze, and Sky Base Zone is just sleep-inducing with the hackneyed lightning bolt obstacles. In terms of what I thought this version of the game had going for it, I think finding Chaos Emeralds in stages is a pretty neat concept, and I wouldn't be opposed to them using that idea in future 2D Sonic games. That's pretty much the only thing I think this version does better than the Genesis one, and even then, that's only because I think the Genesis special stages were so poor. Which, on that note, I did find these 8-bit special stages pretty fun to play. I got bounced around a crap ton, but still not nearly as frustrating as the original game. But what's infinitely more frustrating are these horrific no-ring boss fights. The first few are pretty easy, but the one in Labyrinth just pisses me off with the underwater physics and attacks. But hey, one thing this version does have going for it is that the soundtrack is an absolute win. Not something to listen to in any context outside the game in my opinion, but I think it does offer something to bop your head to while playing. And yeah, that's it. As I said, this is going to be a pretty quick video, as I think Sonic 1 on the Game Gear is a perfectly serviceable experience that comes recommended if you want a retro 2D platformer that offers a mostly quality experience. But beyond that, the only Sonic one you need to play is the Genesis original. In any form, just as long as it isn't this one. Now, while I don't think the handheld version of Sonic 1 is a great game by any stretch of the imagination, it certainly looks it when compared to the handheld version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Sonic 2 on the Game Gear is one of the worst 2D Sonic games ever made. Like, I'm trying to think of a 2D Sonic platformer that could possibly compare to the plain and simple frustration provided by this game. Starting with something that could be said of the 8-bit Sonic 1 that wasn't a massive issue but is game-breaking here. Screen crunch. My god, if you ever feel the inclination to play this game, do it on the Master System, because the Game Gear version is borderline unplayable with the amount of times you just cannot see what's coming, what is below you, or what is above you. I'm just gonna roll the clips over what I'm saying and you'll quickly understand what I mean. There's just nothing satisfying about completing a stage in the 8-bit version of Sonic 2. You just sigh in relief knowing you've made it past another stage, hopefully being able to complete the next one. This game really has got to be one of the worst cases of screen crunch I've ever seen, making the simplest of platforming segments frustrating gambles with life or death consequences. Seriously, the screen crunch problem just ruins the game, full stop. Bosses are a nightmare now because I can barely see anything coming, which is not helped by the lack of rings. I don't want to explore for Chaos Emeralds because playing the stage is difficult enough. But this issue is compounded by the game's other major problem, the one that makes the Master System version also not fun to play. This has got to be one of the most gimmicky 2D Sonic games ever as well. Gimmick Mountain Zone. You'd think all the stages would be worthy of that name. Minecarts and Underground Zone, these godforsaken hang gliders in Sky High Zone, these air bubbles in Aqua Lake, tubes, spinners, the works. Gotta love how this was one of those retro games that has no tutorials, so every single time you encounter one of these new gimmicks, let's hope you have the manual, because otherwise you'll have absolutely no idea how to pass these gameplay segments. You might wiggle your way through Sky High Zone, but Aqua Lake, no. You need to know that down slows your speed or else you cannot beat the stage. Because that's how you make great games, right? I even thought the music was a total downgrade. Really, the only track I like in this game was You Can Do Anything from Sonic CD being the melody of Green Hills Zone. Well, this came out in 1992 and CD came out in 1983. Maybe it's the other way around, but whatever. These level title cards are also the 1990s version of total clickbait. Like, Tails is not playable in this game at all, nor does he follow you around. The plot of the game is that Tails was kidnapped by Robotnik and now Sonic has to save him. The manual establishes that this game takes place after Sonic beat Eggman the first time in Sonic 1, but before Sonic 2 on the Genesis. So that's interesting for us Sonic timeline people. By Gimmick Mountain Act 3, I got a game over, and this means you have to do it all over again. Screw that. This game was absolutely terrible, and I just gave you all the reasons why. Longtime subscribers should know my policy. If a game leaves me so repulsed that I don't want to finish it, I'm just not gonna do it. The end. Sonic Chaos. More like Sonic Bland. Oh yeah, I got him good with that one. Seriously though, I only did a Let's Look at Game Gear Sonic 2 in my LP channel, but I did a full playthrough of Sonic Chaos back in 2017. But instead of just thinking it forgettable but fine like the first Sonic handheld game, this game left no impression on me whatsoever until the very end. What we had thus far was an okay game with nothing really going for it or against it. First, Sonic Chaos is much more forgiving than either of its predecessors. Screen crunch is still a thing, so the best version is definitely on the Master System, which was the one I played for the LP. However, in both versions, the player is absolutely showered with lives and continues, as you just really breeze through most of these stages. While writing this, I literally just played this game a few hours ago, but I already remember very little of its level design. Like, I'll take that over 8-bit Sonic 2 any day, but it still doesn't leave me wanting to come back and use these rocket shoe power-ups. Finally be able to have rings during boss fights. Run on these straight lines in Mecha Green Hill. Yeah, I thought this game was really uninspired. But hey, if you thought it was difficult, you can select Tails as a playable character for the first time in the series. And by that I mean the real Tails, not the Sonic clone from Sonic 2. Tails can fly now.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now!
They fly now! Can I just say, it really says something about my sense of humor that I died laughing at that clip. Like, I love to laugh at comedy that completely falls flat in its face like that. You don't use Tails' flight like you do in Sonic 3. Instead, you from a standstill, hold up and the jump button. He does fly for a decent amount of time, so give it a whirl if you feel inclined. If it were just left all the stuff I just mentioned, Sonic Chaos would be a bland, safe Game Gear title that isn't really worth playing in 2020. But this is the worst final boss fight I've ever seen put into a Sonic game. Evidently, my dozens of lives and continues was actually worth a damn because of the fact that I died dozens upon dozens of times, as Eggman's final mech in this game does not play well at all with the butter physics these Game Gear games have. As I can barely dodge these projectiles. That's a skill problem, that can be overcome. But what can't is when the hitbox of the bullet is big enough to kill me when it doesn't even touch me. As if that wasn't frustrating enough, it's a two-phase final fight here. All you have to do is jump in the cockpit and that's it, or else you die instantly regardless of how many rings you have. What great design, just forget everything the player's been conditioned to expect and then they die from something you could barely see coming, having to redo the first fight all over again. And if you get a game over, back to the title screen you go. I have no response to that other than, get the hell out of my face with that bull crap. Again, pre-final boss, Sonic Chaos is like a C tier game, perfectly harmless, but this final boss just brings it down to a D grade. The amount of frustration packed into this one boss fight seriously does tarnish the entire game's legacy in my eyes. But the next one is supposed to be good. Sonic the Hedgehog, Triple Trouble. To my surprise, this game actually is really good. Now, it's still a Game Gear Sonic game, so it can't be anything particularly amazing, but I think this game is designed well enough to be a quality companion to the Genesis titles. Let's start with how, for the first time in the Game Gear series, I never felt like the screen was much of an issue. That's because Triple Trouble never saw a release on the Master System, meaning that the level design was completely created with the Game Gear's screen in mind, producing a much better game. Now, I still think Sonic handles like he has butter strapped to his feet. Much like Crash Bandicoot from my last review, I think good level design can save controls that aren't the best. I find these stages just enjoyable 2D Sonic action. Slopes, loops, incline jumps, set pieces I find pretty enjoyable, like the returning rocket shoes, the snowboard item that should have gotten more use in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, or the scuba gear. The floating bubble aspect of Aqua Lake Zone is back, but I find the level design of Tidal Plant much less frustrating than that stage, as there aren't that many blind sides to speak of, with a plethora of alternate pathways. I just found playing these stages comfortable enough to explore, leading to me finding the hidden Chaos Emerald of every stage. Also, Knuckles the Echidna was such a popular character following Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles that he makes his way to the Game Gear series as well, getting tricked by Eggman for the second time. Although I'm not sure why he got tricked in this game, not much of a reason is given. But this game does have a new character, Knack the Weasel the Sniper. Not much to say about him other than even a Game Gear spin-offs create new characters. Sonic, distinctive, what more can I say? This has got to be one of the shortest Jay's Reviews episodes in a hot minute, but like I said, I don't want to waste people's time. I don't think Sonic on the Game Gear needs to be an hour-long video like Sonic on the Genesis did. This is just a quick side follow-up video to that one. However, while we are done with the 4 main Game Gear platformers, we still won't be opening our hearts anytime soon. Because there is a mound of crap in the Sonic series between now and then. Thankfully, there are tons of other games and videos I want to discuss and make before that video, but in the next episode of the Sonic Retrospective, we shall be tackling Sonic's life in the 5th generation of consoles. And it wasn't pretty. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like. YouTube's machine is a fickle beast, to say the least. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.